This is a movie about a guy making a movie.
Action. A street brother turns revolutionary.
Okay.
Wait.
And no one will fund it. No one will touch it.
Who's gonna want to see that? Black guys always die in the end.
He has to sacrifice everything. His entire crew gets arrested. He's on the brink of bankruptcy, loses sight in one of his eyes.
It's about how far did this guy have to go?
In spite of all of these obstacles, he made the film, and that film made history.
In this movie, Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song becomes the top-grossing independent hit of 1971.
The first revolutionary film made by a black filmmaker.
First position!
And it's still good. He was the man who opened up the door.
And this is a true story.
Cut!
Based on my father making this movie.
That sequence with my dad running, this is the place.
Let's do it. Let's do it now. Okay, cut. All right, move it back. Now this car's gonna blow. Bam, very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Because of Melvin Van Peebles, this industry can never go back to something.
You know, like Shaft, Superfly. All of those movies came right after Melvin did his thing.
Only he and Gordon Parks were the only two black men at that time directing studio pictures.
I think to understand what Melvin was doing cinematically, you have to understand the political landscape at the time. If you look at the late 60s, mid to late 60s, you see a lot of African American folks, we're considering ourselves colored. And the subtext of that is we're colored, man. Just let us in. Recognize our humanity. Colored's just a little bit different from white. It's not that different. So if you look at cinema at the time, you'll see us being noble and clean and trying to be the best we can be to say to that dominant culture, please, let us have a slice of the American pie.
And in that context, films that were black themed at all tended to be things like Heat in the Night, which is an excellent film. But the dignity that's won by Poitier is as if to say, to win equivalence, you must be overqualified. That fraction of black society that Malcolm called the 1/10 of 1%, and then you can win. Then you can perhaps win the respect of some small town sheriff in the South.
In the 60s, you know, a new thing appeared on the scene in the American consciousness. Black folks suddenly were alive and clamoring, knocking at the door. And the whole question was, what do they want?
I have a dream that one day that all men are created equal.
So at this time, you have the whole civil rights movement. You have folks coming together and linking arms just to sit at the same lunch counter, go to the same school. And Dr. King is saying we've got to have freedom by peaceful means. And Brother Malcolm is saying we've got to have freedom by any means. And what happens? They killed them both. So we see that. We see the death of Malcolm, the death of King, Medgar Evers, JFK, RFK, and black folks no longer want to be colored.
There was this movement in the 60s in the black community away from that, away from women straightening their hair and going to afros, celebrating African culture. The term at the time was Afro-American, not African-American.
You have the riots after King and Malcolm, and you have the Vietnam protests. And so you have a different kind of energy happening in this country and on the street of this country. And yet Hollywood is still showing black folks as trying to be colored, trying to fit in. Along comes Melvin, and he makes the first black power film.
What I feel that Melvin brought to cinema was the authenticity of the black experience expressed on a black man's terms. And it had never been done that way before.
He gave a different image of what Hollywood should be doing in terms of race relations.
He chose to take some money and get some money and make the film that he wanted to make.
This idea I got is kind of like a ghetto western. In fact, the brother even wears like a black kind of cowboy hat.
Yeah.
And dig this, man. At the end of the movie, when he gets away, words come blazing across the screen. Badass nigga's gonna come back and collect some dues. What if you lost your mama? You taking drugs now?
One knew that Melvin had this film in him, at least in my memory, for years before he made it. He was obsessed with it. He was focused on it. Nothing was going to get in his way in terms of making it. This film had to be made. It was going to be made. It was going to be made his way.
How you gonna do that? You know, you got a studio, you got the financing, you got the distribution. Okay, Melvin, show us, that you can pull all this stuff off.
Studios won't touch it. No one will touch it. They won't even let him make the movie because he's got a second mandate. And the second mandate is, not only do I want to make a movie, but I want to make a movie with a 50% third world crew. In other words, all those disenfranchised minorities.
We had formed a solidarity group of filmmakers, Black and Latino Filmmakers Coalition.
The unions won't have that. They're lily white. So he gets an idea to make this film under the guise of making a black porno film, because that's below the union radar.
It really was a great countercultural era where freewheeling and wonderful, and where we all were really out to change the world through film.
Let's do it. Let's make a movie.
And they get arrested because the authorities are not used to seeing minorities with that kind of camera equipment.
Lock them up. Suspected grand larceny and impersonating LAPD police officers. So we spent the weekend in jail.
He would come in the studio. We all be in the studio. We'd be in a circle. It was a circle of musicians. And he would stand right in the middle of the circle of musicians and sing these parts. And so we would just imitate him.
When the movie hit and people started going, your father sort of broke maybe about 6 or 7 laws. One was budget. Number 2, talking to white people in a certain way. Some of his setups for the scenes without a close-up, but still telling the story.
We saw heroes in the film. For example, the scene where Melvin is escaping from the police and the patrol car is being burned. The community comes to Melvin's defense. We see this as a self-defense movement with the community embrace Melvin, and Melvin emerges in that film as a hero. We were 48 chapters across America. We had every one of our chapters mobilize community support to go see that movie because we were so inspired by this first revolutionary piece of cinema.
At the completion of the film, only 2 theaters in the whole United States will play it. But the movie goes on and it becomes a top-grossing independent hit in 1971.
Melvin's picture was the first one with realistic, smart, cool, funny cynicism that put audiences in the shoes of a cat who's just a guy on the street.
Melvin, in making Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, made the film that he wanted to make. And in making the film that he wanted to make, he made, in turn, the film that the whole of post-civil rights, pro-black power, black America wanted to see at the time.
When I first got the idea to make Badass, was on the set of Ali. And I'd met Ali when he came to the premiere of my first film, New Jack City. But now we're spending time with Ali, and he'd come over to me and he'd say, "Hey, Van Peebles, if you were any smarter, I'd enjoy your company." He'd ask me about my dad. And, when are you going to do something on your dad? We talked about and started to think about if Muhammad Ali was the first in-your-face black power athlete, Melvin Van Peebles was the first in-your-face black power director. So I went back to my old man. I said, "Listen, I'm thinking about trying to do your story." He said, "Who's going to play me?" I said, "Me." He kind of looked at me, gave me that Melvin look. He said, "Well, just don't make me too nice." And that was his way of saying, "Do your thing." We sent the script out. We got passes, just like Sweetback got passed. And the one cat who got the script right away and is not afraid of politically charged material was Michael Mann. Michael Mann, of course, had been directing me on Ali. And Michael became our executive producer.
My wife and I, on our first date, and this is 1970, we happened to go to the State and Lake Theater on State Street in Chicago, which is very much an inner-city theater, to see Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. And it was a riot in the theater, in a great sense. I mean, the audience was so taken by this film.
We made this movie in the spirit of the original. We had the same multiracial crew that my dad had. We had all the flavors, and it was beautiful.
Look around you. No crew has ever looked like this. We're not supposed to get along, let alone be able to make a movie together.
They say that the golden rule is that he who has the gold makes the rules. But sometimes, if you have the right project, if you've got something you believe in with some cinematic, nutritional value, people get on board.
I play the character of Bill Harris, the producer of the movie.
It hurts my feelings calling me a hippie.
Him and Melvin get a connection early on in the story, and these two misfits can't work within the system, can't work with anyone else, but somehow they manage to work together.
It really was a great countercultural era where we all were really out to change the world through film.
Well, my character is Priscilla. She's actually Melvin's secretary. I can't be in the movie.
What?
I'll leave production if you want me to.
Leave production?
So he said, well, you know, this is going to be history. The kids are going to learn something from this, and this is going to be something that you're going to be proud of. So I said, okay, Melvin, you know, I'll help you with this.
I play the part of Jose Garcia, who is a real pioneer in this business. Jose Garcia, the real person, pick one.
Every film is like a family, and each has its children to tell, and we're telling ours.
Viva Puerto Rico Libre.
I called up my friend John Singleton, and he came in. He played the DJ.
KLST, rap on.
We had Nia Long, and she played Sandra, the voice of reason.
No, it's not about you and your chicks. It's about you not respecting anyone.
David Alan Grier played Clyde, who was our producer.
Oh, like I said, I'm in.
Always do a good job.
And, of course, to play my grandfather, Melvin's father, we were lucky enough to have Ozzie Davis, who, besides Melvin and Gordon Parks, was the other black director.
I'm teaching the boy about work.
Every day on the shoot, there were parallels between the way we were shooting our movie.
Rolling! Slate. Action.
Wash your car, mister. No charge if you don't like it.
And what happened with my father making his movie.
No charge if you don't like it. Yeah, no charge if you don't like it.
That sequence with my dad running, this is the place. The only thing was, there was no graffiti. While the explosion happened, we'll be back here, and that camera over me would be, I'd say, wider, and you'll see over us, so you tie us into the explosion.
In the scene where the car explodes, we intercut between Sweetback and Badass, our movie. And it was tricky because there's a lot of places where we're using my dad and places where we're using me. People say, man, you look a lot like your father. Well, there's a reason for that. Sometimes it was my father.
Need everybody back. Need all those people back over there.
Oh,
They're coming,
You know, the thing that strikes me about when I first read this script is there's all these misfits coming together. They come together and they find a family, and these misfits actually make something and make something of themselves. And that's kind of what's happening on the set here, because we're all a bunch of freaks.
Henrik, coming in.
It's just an incredible experience. You get all these people of different ethnic backgrounds and the same ethnic backgrounds to work together and create a project that means something nice.
You know what I'm saying?
Musically, the objective was to contemporize one of the greatest bands of all time, Earth, Wind & Fire, and to extract elements from that and the dirt of the original recordings that were the score of Sweetback's Badass Song, and create our own score using that as inspiration.
And what's cool is it's making this film was almost like life imitating art, imitating life.
Okay, so this is the original album, flip side, a collector's item for sure, and it'll be Mario's face here instead of Melvin's.
I'm very happy to work with Mario. You know, I would do it again. Hopefully next time the brother will pay me.
It's kind of hard
to do like a movie that's in 70s or 60s or some other time. Because like wardrobe, you get wardrobe and then you're like, this doesn't match. It's like, well, that's how it's supposed to be.
What Melvin did when he created Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song was not just say, I'm going to take this actor and it's going to be starring this guy or that guy. He said this film is starring the community. And that's a very interesting notion. And I thought about, well, when did my dad get that idea?
Melvin, played by Mario, of course, has the gem of the idea to go out and make a revolutionary film. But he's got to write it. He's got to design it. He goes to his apartment, writes notes on yellow pieces of paper, and he gets ideas, and he tacks them up against a wall.
He's running, and then... fire.
And because we shot all this locked off, it's going to go from day to night to dusk to all these different things, from his beard being stubbled and clean shaved, to being asleep, to doors being open and closed, as though to symbolize a month or so. And then at a certain point, he puts music down all the time to inspire him, and there's music, and you see the needle go down, and you tilt up, and you're seeing the mirror, and you're in his room, but outside the mirror, it looks like it's outside the neighborhood.
Gets up and walks into the mirror, not only sees his reflection, but he actually sees, instead of the other side of the building, the street that he grew up in. So in order to do that, we bring part of the wall and create the effect all on camera.
And as he goes into the looking glass, into this world, everything becomes the same color. What my dad did in Sweetback was he had these voices that are sort of like angelic, sort of ghetto voices, like a ghetto choir. It's Halloween and there's a little kid just jumping on some old box spring mattress. And that would be the first voice that would say, yes, you can do it.
You played my mama. You played my papa. Who played me? The angel muse also tells Granddad the voices of the angels singing to him.
They played your mama.
True to the Van Peebles tradition, we use extras you don't have to pay a lot, so I used my kids in the film.
The movie starts with my voice. After my voice, it's Dad's Mario's voice. And after that, it's Melvin's voice. So, son, father.
There's an old saying that maybe the mother shows you the mountain, gives you that sense of self, and that maybe it's your father that teaches you how to climb it. And it was my mother that showed me that mountain. And she encouraged my creativity. And it was the summer of 1970 when I went to stay with my dad in L.A. And he was creating something, too. He was creating a film. But it was also the summer that I got to know my father. And I thought, well, if the A story was the making of the movie, then the B story was this father-son connection.
I want you to start calling me Dad. Answer me when I talk to you.
Mom lets us call her Maria. It's less confusing when everyone's calling out for their mother.
I'm not your mother, I'm your father.
One of the things we need in our culture and in our community is the reestablishment of the black male, the reunion of the father and the son. I play the father of Melvin Van Peebles. The father is organized, is clean, is economical, and he teaches. He doesn't overteach. Teaches by example and by precept. And this, too, is a good thing for us to see in our story.
I played Mario Van Peebles as a kid. Mario, at this time, had some rough times with his dad.
One of the things I wanted was not to try to play Melvin as good or bad, but play him as I knew him. Play the truth. Play my father straight up.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie is with me and Mario when I walk in and, I see him struggling with his vision.
Go get me some coffee.
How about your eyes? You gotta see a doctor. Please, Dad.
Get the old man some coffee. Go ahead. I'm fine. Go ahead.
And, right then, Melvin lets Mario into his life. It's a very emotional scene.
I remember at some point my dad was trying to get funding and he went to see this guy about money. And the guy pulled my father aside and he said, listen, you're going to do this movie, but your son's going to be there? And my dad said, yeah. He said, well, what if your son sees you fail? And my dad said, well, he's got to learn how to fail. You're going to fail in life, too. It's not just seeing him win. It's seeing how he handled it when he didn't. Meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same.
Your father came from the street as well as he could go into the corporate world. And so he sort of kept him off balance, and I like that very, very much.
It was a time that was exciting, but it was scary. We knew something politically important was happening.
First time I'd been in an audience, the audience was probably 75% black. It was the first time I'd been in a theater with an audience where there's a dialogue between the screen and the audience.
It was a great deal of solidarity. That's what brought us together.
This revolutionary step was so beautiful and so perfectly orchestrated. It set what I call a paradigm for the generation to follow to make the films that we want to make.
And that's why it's no coincidence that you look at Melvin Van Peebles on the cover of the New York Times in 1971 or 72, and 20 years later, on the cover of the New York Times, you've got the Black Pack, and you've got Singleton and Spike and myself and the Hudlin brothers.
Hollywood ain't seen nothing like Melvin ever before. And Hollywood ain't gonna never be like it was before since Melvin came.